What's the worst business idea you've seen someone try to execute? The banana pudding store. One day, my ex-BF and I were taking a stroll downtown in the city that we were living in at the time. We passed a store that was called the Banana Pudding Store or some such. I don't remember exactly. Well, I'm sure they sell more than just banana pudding. So let's go in. You know, like how Home Depot sells more than just hardware. They sell Gatorade, candy bars, etc. There were vats of banana pudding in the display cases and I thought, well, surely they must also sell other flavors. So I asked if I could have a chocolate pudding and the guy politely informed me that they didn't have chocolate pudding. So I asked if they had maybe butterscotch or something else. No madam. Just banana pudding here. I mean, it wasn't false advertising. But surely he couldn't be selling just one single flavor in that whole shop. Could he? As expected, the next time we strolled down that street a month or two later, the store was shuttered. I feel bad for him. I'm sure that the guy made great banana pudding that all of his friends and family would compliment him on and tell him that he should probably open a banana pudding shop cause it was so good. But I don't think they literally meant that. Not going to lie, if I walked into an establishment called the Banana Pudding Store and it was filled with vats of banana pudding in the display cases, and even if for some reason the first question out of my mouth was could I have a chocolate pudding, rather than do you have other flavors besides banana, surely I would not be surprised and continue asking about other flavors. Maybe that's just me though. At a place I used to work, we supplied printing companies with their ink. Being that digital printing is well and truly established at the point, there wasn't a whole lot of business for this type of ink anymore. So there was a lot of competition between suppliers. One of the technicians somehow weaseled his way to the top despite no business experience. When he was told to very simply make more money, rather than go out and find new customers, his bright idea was to make our company's ink weaker, with the intention that our customers will just have to buy more product to complete their jobs. Surprise. The customers didn't like that and went to competitors. Business was closed within a year. Edit to make some clarifications. The CEOs of the parent company in Japan weren't fully aware of everything this guy was doing to run the business into the ground. There was a lot more stupid shit he would do. I could probably fill a book with stories from that place. It was not a sound business plan that you could compare to other products and company, because we were already getting some complaints that some of our colors were weak. This is what gave the guy the idea to make them weaker. He was told by several people it was a stupid idea and would not have the desired effect. It would just drive our clients away. He was certain though that they'd all just accept the shittier product and pay more for it. I used to work with small startup businesses, not fancy tech startups. Lots of construction and restaurants. My favorite too. Restaurant, hair salon, child care center. But non-profit, there were lots of people who wanted to do non-profit. It was mostly very community driven, wanting to give back and help employ people. She had a place picked out and was about to rent and had come to us to ask for money. She named the building, which was tiny, with no kitchen. She was lovely and we encouraged her to open the salon. But maybe without the salon workers cooking for folks in between clients, and without clients caring for kids. Hook a bus. Older gentleman who was certain that this was a good idea. He wanted money to buy a bus and then he was going to drive it around to find women who wanted to hang out with CEOs and executives. And then during the lunch hour he was very insistent about the lunch hour party, would take it to the downtown business core and park in front of large business HQs, and the gentleman who worked there would pay to come party on the bus. But you see, they'd just be paying a fee to be on the bus, so it's not like anyone is paying for six, so it's totally legal. He had already bought the bus. It was an old school bus. We did not fund his endeavor. In 2011 we had the Norwegian butter crisis in Norway. The shortage caused soaring prices and store stocks of butter ran out within minutes of deliveries. A pack of butter would sell for between $40 to $200 on the black market. A friend got the idea to drive over to the neighboring country, Sweden, to buy butter and sell it here in Norway. The problem was that you could only carry 100 packets of butter across the Norwegian border, so he made a deal with our local nursing home. He rented a bus and took 20 elderly people on a road trip to Sweden in exchange for receiving the butter quota. The next day, the butter crisis suddenly resolved, and he was left with 2,000 packets of butter he could not sell. He still got his basement full of butter. An old, local pub legend. Friend of mine won 400k-ish, around 500k at the time, on the lottery. So, he decides to buy tanning salons opposite each other, thinking that he had an instant monopoly. But the problem came when he started getting them to compete with one another. The managers at each salon began a pricing war, and he was broke in 6 months. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to open a dance club in my northern Canadian city with a dress code. 90% of the population is tradesmen and miners who only own car huts and high-vis. Needless to say, it shut down within 6 months. Can't believe no one mentioned that guy who went on Shark Tank to pitch a Bluetooth earpiece that you got surgically implanted in your ear canal that you charged by sticking a needle in your ear while you slept. Top for me has got to be a client of a design firm I used to work at. He was a trucker. His wife was a trucker. He wanted to make a sanitary pad that wouldn't need to be changed. Imagine a pad with a little line running down to a micro vacuum strapped to your leg, exhausting into another leg bag. Basically a pad that sucks the juices into a bag you can chuck in the trash later. Edit: just to be clear, this was specifically a menstrual pad you are meant to wear for days at a time. Edit: 2 lots of your la mentioning the Purewick. The challenge this one would have had to solve was passing chunky menstrual blood ladies you know what's up through a tiny tube. If you're wondering how they solved it, they didn't, lol. Also, here's another good one. One client wanted a vape that just blew pot smoke into the air for the purpose of hotboxing his car. He had money, so hey, one of the engineers designed a little turbine like a small turbocharger the size of a cherry. Damn if it didn't work way too well. But the high-pitched screeching noise that turbine made, sheesh. A lady opened a Southern soul food buffet in my city. It was incredible. Amazing food. On some days, it was a buffet with a rotating menu depending on the day of the week. And those days were not equal. So what happened was people would go on an off day, be unimpressed, not come back, or come on one of the better days, love it, come back on an off day, then never come back. I was so disappointed. I would donate towards reopening that restaurant, but with only the optimal menu every day. That woman has serious culinary talent. In my college town there was a cereal restaurant. Why make a bowl of cereal at home when you can pay $5 for someone else to do it? Not surprisingly, it closed soon after opening. We have a small time theme park in my state called Evermore, and they thought it would be a good idea to try and sue Taylor Swift over her album of the same name. There was a bar that opened up in my city and their entrance was hidden. They did a news story and they refused to tell the paper where it was actually located. To everyone's complete surprise, they only stayed open for a couple of weeks. In my country there was a guy who used to sell wood. The problem was he did not have any of it, so he would ask for payment and then not give the product afterwards, hoping that procrastination and time will make the problem go away. He did 4 years in jail. My schoolmate at high school wanted to be a club manager. He organized a concert where he invited kinda famous foreign band to the local club. He paid so much money for them just to arrive their expenses at the bar. In the end like 20 people showed up. Half of them were his friends. Fortunately he had a very rich dad, so he paid for that and life went on. The dude started selling art next day. No need to say he failed miserably again. Father-in-law drove 18 hours down to Florida to catch shrimp. Filled his tiny car with tons of the shrimp and drove back. It took days to vacuum, seal the shrimp that hadn't gone bad, only to sell a few bags to some friends. The car smelled like seafood for years. Missed one key step. Preserving the catch. Reminds me of a friend that tried to grow weed in the woods. Ended up working like a charm. He has so much weed he could barely pick it all. Filled multiple garbage bags with it. Loaded the bags into his car. Then, well, he didn't research properly and just let it sit. Tried to smoke some wet weed. But as you can guess, it wasn't burning. A few days later it was covered in hot mold and the car smelled like a planet-sized skunk exploded in there. In about 2005 my friend's dad tried to start an arcade in a small town just outside walking distance from a school using beat up second-hand machines. To get there from the schoolyard have to walk by an established larger arcade that also sold food. Edit for the actually crowd. I guess it was walking distance, just not a convenient walking distance. Sorry for poor wording. It all sounded fine and dandy until you mentioned the larger arcade with food. Context: I live in Las Vegas. When I was in my 20s, I was hired by a man who wanted to build me space for strippers. His goal was for the men on the site to pay him to follow their favorite strippers and know what clubs they were dancing at and when. He shut the project down after months of paying me when he found out that no stripper would sign up for it. Sign up to get stalked. One of the younger dudes in my karate class was going to start a handyman business. 24H. Anything needing to be done anywhere in our district. Sounds good. You gonna get a loan and buy a used truck and get some tools, and you never have talk time on your phone. So will you get a landline 2006? So not super outlandish. No, I'll go on my bicycle and I'll just use the tools they have and they can email me when they need service. Right, because when I have water spraying out of my geyser through the ceiling at 3 AM I'm going to email a dude on a bicycle to come fix it using all the tools and the ladder I don't own. Subject: fire. Dear Sir Madam, I'm writing to inform you of a fire that has broken out. A digital camera that looks like a classic Japanese 35mm point and shoot. The memory card, which looks like a 35mm film roll and only has space for 36 images, has to be sent away like in the old days to get developed into prints that are mailed back a week later. It was on Kickstarter. There was a guy in my town that opened a business that was the equivalent of a brick and mortar version of Craigslist or newspaper classified ads. It was a unit in a strip mall with bulletin boards. You paid to put an ad up and other people came to look at the ads with a small picture. This was after Craigslist existed, not some pre-internet thing. There was no actual merchandise in the store, just crappy pictures of stuff with the contact info. It wasn't even a high foot traffic location. You had to maneuver through a busy intersection, park and go inside to look at a bulletin board. It went under and he tried to blame the landlord because he couldn't get a sign permit for the end of the building, even though he had 2 other signs. This one is straight up insanity. When I was in high school, one of my friends wanted to start a little coffee shop hot chocolate stand with a cuddle corner and free hugs for anyone who wants them. She offered jobs to our other friend's ex. The idea was that this little business would be operated and staffed by high schoolers. She failed to see the issue with having 16-year-old girls required to give free hugs to customers or having to staff the cuddle corner. It could be very successful, but to all the wrong people. I love escorting people. I put an ad out for an escort service and got a lot of responses, mostly creeps. Made a few friends. Dwight Schrute. Guy I know got a small inheritance, enough for a deposit on a unit or small house. Nope. Seahorse Farm. Turns out seahorses are difficult to breed. Someone in Edmonton, Canada opened a dairy store, milk and cheese, and placed it across the street from a large grocery store. He hoped that shoppers would buy everything they needed at the grocery store, except their milk and cheese, which the grocery store had ample supply of, and make another trip to their store for milk and cheese. It didn't last. Edit: wow. I woke up to a whole lot of responses. Many people brought up specialty places, butcher shops, artisanal stores, etc. Which, yes, can be a great thing. The place I'm talking about just supplied the same big dairy milk at the same prices, and no fancy cheese. It was only really convenient when you only needed a carton of milk and didn't want to deal with a huge parking lot and the hassle of massive store. But like I said, it didn't last long at all. I could see a specialist cheese shop working somewhere that stocked things you can't buy in the supermarket and would do party platters and cheesecakes for weddings with whole wheels. But just a regular dairy shop. No a-hole here. Convenience is king when you're doing your regular shop. You'd only use it if you only needed a pint of milk and didn't need anything else at all. A loudmouth drunk, supposedly an ex-NFL player from way back, opened a fancy pizza place across the street from the small town's old favorite normal pizza place. It was a pretty obvious attempt to put the old place out of business and corner the lucrative small town pizza market. The owner of the new place would get hammered and walk around to random tables to schmoz. He would loudly hit on the ladies in front of their dates. It had really good pizza, but it was horribly overpriced and the portions were tiny. It went out of business pretty quickly. Monthly sex toy subscription. You would get a different sex toy each month, which is an okay idea, I guess. There's one of those for everything nowadays. But the only problem this guy had is that he wanted the customers to eventually return the toy so he could pass it on to the next customer. He actually got in talks with an owner of a local sex shop to help him start, but the enthusiasm flattened out quite quickly. Someone in my neighborhood opened an artisan hot dog restaurant called Everyone's Frank about a decade ago. My dad and I went in once at about 6 p.m. on a Saturday. We were the only customers, so the owner who was working the register chatted us up. He talked about his plans to expand the business to about 15 locations, which was completely delusional. He also talked about how much he spent on the interior at Essen, which was pointlessly fancy. The hot dogs cost $9 and tasted terrible. We never went back, and the place was bankrupt within 6 months. My dad always said they'd gone bankrupt. Dude bought 150k fidget spinners at the height of the craze. It took months to ship out from China, and by the time all his shit arrived, the mania had ended, and the retail price was already near his original wholesale price. Duck him, guy still has fidget spinners today. I guess he may eventually do okay on it, but goddamn. My dad has been in hundreds of pyramid schemes. When I was a kid he would always describe how the pyramid worked, and I would help him with his meetings. Took me a long time to figure out his get rich plans were really schemes. He still does them. Never been rich off them though. One was Excel, a super cancer beating fruit juice. You give me 5,000, then you get 5 people to give you 5,000, then they get their own people to give 5,000. Specialty chocolate shop. It only sold the exact same standard candy bars as any supermarket, but with less of a range, and at 4 times the price. I asked the manager if he had Lindt chocolate balls upmarket, but well-known product, and he said, what are those? Also, there was a supermarket 2 doors down. Holy shit. Remember the oxygen bar fad a few years back? Who's enjoying sitting on that near zero value asset today? I have a friend whose family has gotten involved in multiple pyramid schemes, and every single time they get into a new pyramid scheme, they claim it's not a pyramid scheme. No, you don't get it. I am the boss. Once I produce 5 clients for my mentor, then I keep all my new clients and they have to get me 5 new clients each. It's people helping people.